This thing says that this hangout is live. Welcome, one and all. It's Friday, time for an episode of the Hot Box. Very exciting stuff. Got the great Gooey Rubinski back, and yeah, I got a special treat for y'all. My favorite and your favorite. You just don't know it yet. Professor Progressor in the house. Going to talk about some weed stuff. Should be very exciting. So, hotboxpodcast.com/live. You can watch these every week or every time we do them.
On the seventh day,
The terrors of tripping on pump. Be there! Scour the spaceways! Explore vast alien worlds! Tin right here contains the whole rigmarole.
I used to smoke about an ounce of hash every day.
Good.
And it made me go a little bonkers.
Maybe if I occupy his mind with more duties, I can control his space.
Hi, big fat doobies. Hi.
Hi, what's up, everybody? Today's Friday, September 4th, 2015. It's episode 164 of the Hot Box. I'm Matt. Got a great show for you this evening. Should always be joining us if you want to watch live and say hey in the chat room and see the video and all that. hotboxpodcast.com/live. Joining me this evening, got a couple great guests for you. The first, he came with me to the Northwest Cannabis Classic. He is my co-worker. Turned into one of my good friends here in Boomtown. You heard him actually on the last episode at the beginning, kind of talking about how getting rained out at Hempfest was no bueno, and then getting drilled by me on some silly chemistry stuff. So Professor Progressor in the house. What's up, man?
Hello. Thank you for having me.
I am glad to have had you and to have you again. And then, we'll be giving Gooey Rubinski a call here in a moment. I do want to mention the Craft Vapory review is up on anewdomain.net. So if you guys are, I know stoners also like to smoke cigarettes. So if you're either trying to quit or you just want something that you can smoke everywhere, this is pretty cool. It's kind of like Trees.delivery. We had them on the show quite a bit ago, except it's for nicotine or even nicotine-free e-cig juice. I don't even have mine here, but you got yours with you? Let me see that thing.
I have my Ego 1.
So you can get something like this, and you'll see mine on the review over on anewdomain.net. But if you have your own hardware, cool. If not, they'll send you one, and basically you pay each month, and you fill out a thing on their site, craftvapory.com, of the flavors you like and dislike, and their magical elf-ridden algorithm will create you a flavor profile, and each month, depending on how much you pay and how many things you specify you'd like, how many bottles, they send you new ones every month. So it's pretty badass. I was digging it. We all dig them here when you can't smoke indoors and all that. So
tasty flavors,
right? Not too bad. And for
Solid.
a couple of flavor connoisseurs, as you and I are sometimes, like that's pretty good stuff.
Indeed.
So check it out. My review, like I said, it's anewdomain.net. You can find it on there, and craftvapory.com is where that's at. Mentioned we did go to the Northwest Cannabis Classic. What'd you think of that? Not too shabby.
I think it was pretty cool. Definitely got to meet a lot of people from all different areas of the industry, and it's nice to see some things happening in Seattle, places that aren't Seattle.
That one was in Tacoma. They did one first in Alaska, and then they're going to Portland, or I think somewhere near there. But really, really good event. We met a lot of cool people. We got in the back VIP room, got to trade cannabis war stories, I guess, with some other players in the game. So it was good to see. Good to get out and meet people. I did notice people were digging the herb box because how elegant it looked. There are these tables in the back, and they had some rigs set up and some e-nails, and there was just like dabs on the table, and then there's this elegant box that has dabs in it. It was kind of cool.
It's very attractive.
So herb box, check that stuff out, of course. All right, let's get Gooey on the podcast, and we'll talk about some weed stuff. Gooey Rubinski, you're once again live on the Hot Box. How's it going, man?
It's going well. How are you?
Hey, good. You're here with me and Professor Progressor, my co-worker here.
Hey, Gooey.
How are you, man?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good. So why? So what's your science?
Oh, we like to dabble in all sorts, I'd say, but
Dabble. I like that. What is your personal science, though? Your background, Professor?
So I've done some cannabis-related research. I did more of receptor-based research in graduate school at Purdue, and I like to try to synthesize compounds that would target the cannabinoid receptors using synthetic cannabinoids because they're really great at binding to those receptors. That's why they cause such a crazy stimulus when people smoke them from synthetic mixtures and stuff. So they're really good for targeting and stuff like that.
But you weren't doing like you weren't like looking at how the synthetic mixtures like spice and K2 stuff like that were affecting people. You were strictly using the synthetic cannabinoids to see how they bind to receptors in the brain, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, we
should mention that just because on the show we have talked quite a bit about the synthetics and how it's like it's sad that people, because of prohibition and drug tests and everything, and actually at the conference afterwards, we were at the bar talking to some lovely lady there, and she ended up telling us that she does actually smoke, but she has to use monkey pee because she gets drug tested. So some people will go to the extent of just not smoking at all, right? And that's fine. Some people will go the route of the, spicing K2 and then go crazy more times than not. And then others still will strap monkey piss to their leg whenever they have to go pass a drug test. So it is interesting to see.
Monkey. That's the first time I've heard that in my life, the monkey piss thing.
I was there with these two brilliant minds, and from that point on, the rest of the evening, it was like a chemistry discussion on how could we get that stuff out of your system faster than a month? Like, is there something that could be done to get? It was a very interesting. I wish I would have recorded it. It was one of those just like they were drinking and we were just going at it. It was good stuff. So we should mention, I did find after our podcast last week, our last episode, that you have a book out, Gooey. You didn't even mention this book. It's called something about medical marijuana, and I'll put a link to it on the Amazon store on the show notes here. But it was interesting. I haven't finished it yet, but reading the beginning of it is just like listening to the old episodes of the Hotbox. It's really cool how you started, like our first episodes, we started at why is weed illegal? What started it? Harry Anslinger and DuPont. Like we went through all of this stuff, and I'm at that part in your book. I don't want to spoil anything, but I think people know by now where you explain all that, and it's really well written and it's done right, I think. What did you initially write that book for? Like, was it just to get it out there, or?
I started it back in 2009, and then it was like 90% done, and I put the project on the side because I took a technical writing consulting job out of state, and it was like a multi-year focus. It was a big project, so I didn't even touch it. And then in 2012, kind of did a little tweaking, and it forced me to get current on all the laws and everything, in the individual states. And then I finally got it out in 2013. So it was nice that it was able to morph, and I was able. It's amazing the improvements you can make to something if you walk away from it for a while.
When you have it as an ebook, did you also have an actual physical Dead Trees copy, or is it strictly an ebook?
Not yet. I published it as recently as December. So I haven't even knocked on the door of any print publishers, but really, if you want to sell any copies, you got to have a print publisher. So that is something that I do plan to do. It's on my to-do list here.
Well, I was just thinking for something like this, because it changes every couple years or every 4 years, depending on, like, it seems almost better to have it as a living, organism online that you can update and get those updates pushed out to people. So as new states, I don't know if you have those plans, but if you wanted to, you could kind of keep it updated as new states legalize it or make progress.
Well, one reason it might not work so well as a print book in traditional publishing is because it's fairly short, and I did that on purpose. It's under 70 pages. I think it's like 67, 68. It all depends on the type size you use, obviously, on your Kindle or, your iPad. So that's an arbitrary number, but it's short because I wanted something I could give to like a middle of the road, middle class, somebody like my parents.
Right.
Or I could hand it to them and say, look, you have a November 3 ballot issue coming up, and it's kind of important, and there's a lot that's in the balance, although there typically is when you go vote. So, spend 3.5, 4 hours on Saturday afternoon, read this book. Because I think if it was 200, 300, 400 pages, nobody would digest that. Nobody's got the time,
No, it is. It's well put out there and structured, and it is a very easily digestible read. It kind of reminds me, the last book I read like that was Irvin Rosenfeld's My Medicine, the guy from Florida that was a medical proponent. But yeah, his book was short like that, really good to the point. Here's what's going on, and here's why. Yeah. People need that stuff, especially on Kindles, man. I mean, you just have a minute, and you can grab it real quick, and you have it on your little computer thing. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I definitely prefer the efficiency of ebook publishing with updates and everything, because really we're at a stage now where you'd have to have new editions every single year, which is a real pain in the ass for a print publisher with inventory and just the whole bit. They really don't want to deal with those issues.
I like too what authors like Scott Sigler do, and they'll release a chapter of their book at a time as it's happening as a podcast. So if you want, you can listen for free to the whole book. You just have to wait for the episodes, or you can go buy the book and then read it yourself. But you could almost do something like that where your each episode is a new chapter that's getting updated with information or what have you.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've only really gone as far as publishing 1 or 2 of the chapters from the book on my blog. So there's plenty more opportunities, and I think it is fun that it is a living document. So the 2016 edition, which will probably come out in October, maybe November, it will include any updates to the laws. It will be totally current, but then. These elections in November, everything will change again. So that's what makes it very dynamic. You can't get bored with this stuff.
So to start things off, something kind of near and dear to my and the professor's heart, and I thought this was an interesting coming from Keith Stroop from Normal, like the Normal legal counsel, talking about extractions and. The headline that it goes under on the Normal blog, it says extraction reaction. Let's be smart about dabbing. And he says the scientific review of burn injuries in Colorado confirms what many of us have been saying for some time, that the popularity of dabbing brings with it some real dangers and some potential political dangers. So he kind of goes about, he explains like his preference for flour and all that, and saying how the good flour or the hash that they would have back in the day was kind of saved like a champagne or a fine wine, for occasion. But nowadays you have these kids dabbing on the daily, and maybe I don't know what he's so concerned about, except I understand the edible part where, we need proper labels and all of that. Of course, that should go without saying, even though labels are still being, improperly done. But then the part about concentrates, this is what I thought was really interesting, what I wanted to talk to you guys about. He says with concentrates, the most serious issue is the risk of explosion by those who attempt to extract the THC using butane. Novice consumers need to be made aware of the increased strength of marijuana in this form, and concentrates like edibles must be kept away from children, of course. Hash oil is a potent marijuana concentrate that can be as strong as 90% THC and is easily manufactured. The process, in parens, is readily available on the internet using butane as a solvent, but the process is also highly volatile and can result in dangerous explosions that all too often cause serious and sometimes deadly burn injuries. The similarities with the rash of meth explosions a few years ago is difficult to avoid. So then he kind of cites a study that came out in the Journal of Medical Toxicology talking about incidents of burn injuries from BHO extractions in Colorado, looking at January 1st of 2008 through August 31st of 2014, and then comparing the 2 years prior to the legalization of medical use in the state. He says, according to the study, there were no such incidents during the 2 years before medical, and then 19 cases during the medical use only phase lasting from October 2009 through December 2013, and then 12 cases during the first 8 months of 2014. So he says the total number of these explosions is small. Now, he talks about, the stats as far as the percentages of what race is usually involved, 72% being white, male 90%, young, median age of 26. The medium length of the hospital stay, only 10 days, just got some burns patched up, whatnot. So the study's authors concluded hydrocarbon burns associated with hash oil production have increased since the liberalization of marijuana policy in Colorado. A combination of public health messaging, standardization of manufacturing processes, and worker safety regulations are needed to decrease the risks associated with BHO production. So then he goes on and he says that you can avoid all of this by using a CO2 extraction method instead of butane to produce your concentrates. And he says, further, as a culture, we need to get the word out that it's time to bring an end to the use of butane extraction altogether. It's dangerous to produce concentrates with butane, at least by amateurs, and it may well present a health risk to the consumer. Now, CO2 extraction, he says, is safe and non-volatile, avoiding any danger of an explosion. And consumers are further protected because bacteria, mildews, and molds are destroyed, and there's no butane residue in the concentrates made this way. He says it's a win-win solution, but we need to better inform those who produce and use concentrates. If consumers begin to demand CO2 and reject products made with butane, the industry will quickly fall into line. Now, Greg, Professor, as a person here that may know something about this, what does that sound right? Because I feel like CO2 isn't combustible, but the pressures you're working at are far greater than what is used in a BHO extraction.
Yes, absolutely. There's a big difference in the pressure required. So, I mean, it depends on the safety of your equipment, if everything's well maintained, and if it's operated by people who understand how it works and know what to do if something were to go wrong, and understand really hopefully the physics behind it. And I think that's important, especially with CO2, because you're dealing with such high pressures. But
even, I mean, he's almost making it sound like this butane extraction is like some crazy dark art that you have to look on the internet to figure out. But CO2 is safe and non-volatile, and anyone can do it. I mean, he doesn't say that, but it has that air to it that. And from what I understand, it's CO2 extraction, supercriticals are very, there's a big learning curve there, more so than with a butane or propane or whatever other, fuel you're using.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say leave either one of those things up to
the professionals, right? So
yeah.
In either case, then you could make the statement that if they're left to professionals, they're both just as safe, assuming your lab equipment is up to par and standards and all that, right?
Absolutely. These explosions aren't happening in labs. And
there was one that happened in that one lab, but it's because the security guard was making meth or trying to. Well, did you guys hear about that? That was a little bit ago, but it was in I want to say CDC, but I don't think it was that. It was some
government lab.
Lab that their lab blew up because this asshole was in there doing a little shake and bake.
But either way, you want to leave those up to the people who are trained to do those, that are qualified and everything. So if you want to get it the local dispensary. As
Normal's legal counsel, is that a weird thing to come out and say, as to be on one side as opposed to another? I would expect you would be for extractions done in a professional lab setting with people that know what they're doing or just against it altogether. Like I know some people that say it's like, oh, you desecrate the flower and just smoke the weed. Don't do that to it. But you know, that's fine. They're not writing these articles that a lot of people will read and be like, oh, CO2 is safer.
To me, this looks like damage control, you know, for an organization that supports this whole movement.
Sure.
And they see these things happening on the news. They keep getting brought up. They see it as a oh, maybe we'll lose this battle, you know, because of something trivial.
This is the basis of what some laws or changes to laws like we've seen are made on. They see stuff like this and they're like, well, we'll just outlaw butane then.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, there's no real good reason. I mean, granted, people that are open blasting using glass in like their kitchens indoors like dummies, you know, it's not going to stop them. They're still what's going to stop is actual professional labs being able to use, you know, solvents that are just fine to use as long as you know what you're doing with them.
Yeah, there's all this equipment can be certified to be used by the state and make sure it's really safe and properly. Everything's properly hooked up. So I think that's important, just sticking to those guidelines and making sure everything is within the specs. You'll be safe. But again, you know, leave it to the people who do it professionally, for sure.
What do you think, Gooey?
Well, I remember reading a story, and you guys might know this, being in Washington. I think it was in Redmond, and there were a couple ex-Microsoft employees who were cooking up some BHO in their apartment. And it just so happened that in the same building, the ex-mayor of, I believe it was Redmond, but I might be wrong on this. I'm sorry, I'm not more prepared. And she was on like the 4th or the 6th floor of this building. And when their stuff blew up, she had to jump out. And I'm trying to remember if she died in the jump. She was like 86 years old. She was mayor like 30 years ago or something. But it kind of made the news, not only because of the explosion and the connection to cannabis, which, you know, always is clickbait. Anytime I can throw the term marijuana or something in there, but also because of the ex-mayor having, I just wish I could remember if she broke her hip or if she actually was killed, but they were getting ready to throw the book at these ex-Microsoft dudes who were cooking it up.
Yeah, they ended up, I got the story here, they ended up getting 9 years in prison.
Good. They should. Now, did she die?
They do compare it to meth labs quite a bit, of course.
Other people are getting hurt. Shut these.
She later died following complications from her hospitalization. 2 other apartment residents suffered shattered bones as they had to jump from their upper level apartments. In all, the fire caused more than $2 million in property damage. Wow.
Because it's some yahoos. So, I mean, most people can't even parallel park. I'm not sure I want them cooking up BHO in the apartment.
Well, and like coming from Montana, I have had friends that make it, and it's very like, outdoorsy, kind of in the woods. And the material, it's decent, but you don't know what good is until you've seen material like professionally processed and refined by an actual lab. Like the difference is amazing. And yeah, it's the process itself, like there's no releasing any of these hydrocarbons into the atmosphere in a lab as opposed to being outside where you're blasting into a glass bottle basically. I mean, it's better than that, but you know, that's what it comes down to. And then it's just going out into the atmosphere, which, you know, okay, whatever, but people aren't safe about that. And they don't think, oh, maybe I should be doing this outside. And then you have things like this that happen. It's a shame for sure. And especially after such an uphill battle to see it again compared to things like meth labs blowing up and everything like that. That's a huge mark for the industry. So what do you got any new things that you've written over on Waxy we should talk about before we move on?
You know, I contribute several a week, and
what was your favorite this week? I know that's a terrible thing to ask a writer. Which one was your favorite? Because I think mine all sucked, but that's me. How did you have a favorite?
I'm actually behind schedule. I haven't submitted 5 this week. But I kind of like the one from today that was about the physiology of the plant, the morphology, anatomy 101, you know, and it just was talking about, okay, here's the pistils, and, you know, really it's very simple anatomy.
A lot of people don't know that, though, and I did a little research as I was writing these weed reviews for Stuff Stoners, like to have just different descriptors when I'm talking about it, and that's where I stumbled upon the part where like the hairs are called the pistils, and it's most people agree, and it's not. I don't know how much it's been tested. We should actually test it, but that there's no THC content in there. They're just for show, and they're to catch the pollen and all that. And the calyx, and that you want a calyx to leaf ratio that is nice, and like, yeah, there's a lot of botany there that, you know, people just kind of skip over.
Absolutely. And yeah, I didn't want to teach anybody how to be a botanist or a chemist, but
Sure.
I thought, you know, if you're going to be into this, if it's going to be part of your lifestyle, that you consume cannabis in whatever form, you vape it, you smoke it, you eat it as an edible or infused products, you know, whatever. But I think it's kind of important to know where it comes from. I'll never forget when I lived in Virginia, outside of DC years ago, and I met this cool dude who had some land out in the country, out in the rolling hills of Virginia, and he grew his own hot peppers, and he made his own hot sauce, and he actually sold it through some of the local health food stores and stuff. It was completely organic. And he also would volunteer his time by going down into DC and teaching inner city kids about where their food comes from. And he said the number of kids who, you know, 10, 12 years old, who didn't know that milk came from a cow or potato came from the ground, just really basic, very basic stuff. And, you know, you didn't want to laugh at these kids. They were obviously, you know, disadvantaged, but he went in and to the city and tried to, you know, get rid of some of that ignorance. And I think it's the same thing with cannabis. You know, there's a lot of myths, a lot of urban legends. And it's fun to knock those down and find out what the truth of the situation is.
That would be a good segment to kind of go and start collecting a list of all of these misnomers and urban myths and everything. Kind of like the more deadly than weed I was writing. Right? We'd find things that have killed more people than weed and then write about it. But yeah. I think that would be way more informative. This is something interesting on the cannabis, talking about the pesticides that are being used in Denver and how they've cracked down on a bunch of them. And this is something like I saw just all over my Facebook feed a couple days ago, and people were like, "Oh my God, these people, these farms and these stores are selling things and growing things with these dangerous pesticides in them." And nobody like got past the headline, of course, as all good headlines should not let you. But if you look at what was in there, it's all stuff that is used in any like organic section at Trader Joe's, or what's the one everyone goes to, Whole Foods, I think. Yeah. Stuff like that. Like, yep. It's the same stuff. It's the thing is, because cannabis is a Schedule 1, I think the EPA, I believe, they don't have say to be like, here, these ones are also approved for cannabis. They don't have the right for whatever reason. So when they say that, oh, these are not listed, that it's like, well, yeah, they're not listed for cannabis. They're listed for other things. But yeah, I don't know. And of course we don't want pesticides in our wheat. We don't want bugs. But when you get to these levels, I feel like I don't know. It's hard. And of course you can do things like process it and refine it, and hopefully that gets out a lot of those pesticides as it gets out all of the solvents. But I don't know. Is there any way to like make everyone happy? Like you have your organic and your non-organic, I guess.
Well, I mean, I think you should have organic and non-organic, sure. But I think a lot of the states that are implementing medical programs are going actually to the Department of Agriculture. And in many states, it's the Department of Agriculture that has written the regulations or the rules that govern their implementation of said medical program. And for the most part, they are acknowledging that, hey, this is Schedule 1. The feds say it's illegal. We're not even supposed to be doing this. So we're not getting any guidance there. But what they're doing is they're adopting their own state Department of Agriculture regulations in terms of what you would do for corn or any crop. they're not, they're saying, look, this is not specific to cannabis, but this is what we do for everything else that you put in your body.
And they pulled quite a few like lozenges and stuff like that off of some shelves there. They're saying that state law says it is unlawful for someone to use pesticides in a manner inconsistent with labeling directions or requirements. That's Mitch Yeager, the director of the Colorado Department of Agriculture's Plant Industry Division, which makes sense, I guess, if you wanted to just be like, well, you can't, it doesn't say you can use it for marijuana or cannabis, so, it's unlawful at that point, which if you go by the label, it is, right?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So change the label, or does this open up another kind of niche industry of people making like really good? I mean, it's all the same stuff at this point, right? Azamax, Nukem, it's all some neem oil and whatever else. I don't, there's no real breakthroughs. I mean, are you working on anything that'll kill all these bugs, Professor?
No, but I'm just trying to look at this from kind of a pharmaceutical perspective, because if they want to treat it like it's medical, then it should be grown in an environment that is suited for that. So I think if they put regulations on larger growing operations to have clean rooms, for example,
right,
where you go in with a Tyvek suit and there's HEPA filters in the room, basically potentially eliminating the
contaminant,
the contamination hazard,
another vector for contaminant. I mean,
right,
if it's going to get in there,
you can avoid using pesticides that way.
But so are you telling me that all of Purdue Pharma's opium poppies are like pesticide free and like blood free and totally?
But I think if
the end product is though, right? And that's the difference. Your oxys or your fentanyls or whatever's on the shelf doesn't have amounts of pesticides in them, or do they? I don't know. I've never had one.
Never asked that question. Yeah.
Interesting.
Anything that's been,
maybe it's in everything.
Anything that's been mass produced agriculturally definitely has that possibility. I think even if it's distilled,
there's rat poop and baby food.
Yeah, exactly. And down into a corn oil or something like that. There's who's going to say that there's not residual pesticides in that we're adding to our food every day.
I think is it more noticed because this is an industry that does have a large analytical portion to it where things are getting tested. Like and I don't know, maybe your juice box did get tested. There's no, I don't see, and I get it's not a weed juice box, so there's no cannabinoid content on there, but there's no residual solvents. I don't know. You don't see that labeling on your food stuff, even though that thing, may be contaminated with it. You do have food recalls, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But back to what I was kind of going at, I really think it's just beneficial to make the process as clean as possible and as contaminant free as possible. And if you can do that right, then you shouldn't need pesticides. It can be grown naturally or organically, and hopefully in the end you'll have a cleaner product as a result.
Oh, that's a good point.
Is it true some of these bugs are mutating, or the outbreaks are worse than before because of how many large-scale grows there are and how much, not like cross-pollination, I guess, of people going from one to a different one, maybe inspecting it or something. That inspector brings those bugs with him, or her, to all of the sites they visit. Whereas when it was underground, you didn't have as much of that, right? Because people were like, ooh, nobody knows where the grower lives. That's like, it was very secluded. Yeah. So I feel like he wasn't giving tours to people like, hey, come check out my grow, come bring your bugs in here so they can.
I'm sure they'd love to show it off, but.
Yeah, not that way though. I feel like that's an Instagram thing.
Yeah.
I guess at the end of the day, it comes down to labeling, right? Better tests and just a group that's running this that knows what they're doing in that regard. And it'll happen. I mean, we're all learning this as we go, right? We're making it up as we go along.
I think the emergence of the laboratories is great because, especially in the states that have legal recreational, but also in states with just the medical. I want to know my percentages. I want to have as much information, as much detail on a particular strain as I can possibly get. And the only way to do that is with top level, well-funded, real laboratory results.
Yeah, that stuff costs a lot of money for sure. I mean, we at the Cannabis Classic, there was a kid there that had, it's called a MyDX, and they did a Kickstarter and Indiegogo for it, but it's basically supposedly a little pocket, not PLC, or what would you call that? If you, I mean,
maybe like near IR.
A near IR. So it gives you.
I'm not confident about that, but that's just
right. It had 3 magic box sensors that did its deeds, and it needed internet access, otherwise it wouldn't work, which was also interesting. But you gave it a little bit of flour in this cartridge, and it would analyze it and give you certain terpenes it was looking for, and then your cannabinoid content. And we didn't get that into it. He wouldn't let us take it far. Obviously, it was like a $700 thing, but from what he showed, the tests were pretty spot on with the lab that sponsored the event and did all the testing. Like, their results were within 5%, which is what they claim for their 2nd-gen model. But the more technology evolves like that, we'll have more of that stuff for cheaper into the hands of the public, where they can be like, oh, I wonder what's in this. Let me run it through my little pocket HPLC.
It's an iPhone app. Hey,
Yeah.
that weed sucks. I want my money back.
It was on an iPad, actually. That's awesome. So, let's see. In Florida, this is kind of cool. A group is pushing once again for just legalizing their medical. They want to do it for recreational here. So, I don't know. Is Florida ready, Gooey? Is it time?
I'm not real tapped into the Florida situation, but I mean, they're pushing forward with medical for sure. I don't know. It's just, I think I have an attitude bias against Florida just because the whole climate change thing. And, we got, Mario Rubio is from stinking Florida. I don't feel like I ever get any good news from Florida. So I'm like, oh, great. Florida crap. Jesus Christ. These people can do anything. They're killing.
Any state that has its own FARC category, I mean, but it would be cool if they legalized it for the amount of time that they still have on the planet before the ocean swallows up their little state. They need 67,000 signatures for the Supreme Court to review the proposed ballot. So, and then 600,000 more to actually get it on 2016's ballot. So,
I mean, I'm not intimately familiar with the demographics in Florida, but we all kind of know that, there's plenty of people who have retired there in their golden years and everything. That's, I don't know how large a percentage of their population that is. I don't want to be buying into
80%?
Stereotypes and assume that it's, every person.
I'll do it. 80%? I don't know.
But, that's a generation that look at any of these studies from Pew, from, the CBS poll. There were quite a few polls done back in the spring, late spring, early summer. And they all show that, people 18 to 25, 93% say full legalization. What the hell are we doing locking people up for this? You go middle-aged, percentage goes down. You get into folks in retirement years, especially over 55 or 60, and they are so opposed to it, it's not even a joke. So I really wonder what kind of political teeth could an effort like this get in Florida, given their demographics.
I feel like education in Florida should be the first primary goal, because I think it's probably all based on misconceptions and the things that they've been told and raised on their entire lives that are completely not based on scientific evidence. But hopefully spreading the word about the potential medical benefits of cannabis and treating a myriad diseases, that especially those that affect the elderly. I think they could really see the benefits of it just with education.
The guy that opens up the first retirement home cannabis community in Florida is going to be a very, very rich human. I'm just saying. It's a good demographic.
Well, that's the irony of the elderly being against legalization of cannabis and devil weed and all the reefer madness and everything, because of all the segments of society, they, the professor's spot on. Boy, they can benefit the most. Just with standard like osteoarthritis, standard aches and pains that come with the aging process.
Oh yeah.
We know it's so good for that, and it's also, it chills people out if they're stressing out over getting old, because we all do that. I got a 14-year-old daughter. She was stressing out over getting old when she was 6 years old, for God's sake. So it's just a human thing.
It is kind of interesting. It's like a testament to the power of that media and like how much brainwashing actually happened during those decades where, Nixon and Reagan and everything. It's like that generation, they're the most hardcore about it. They're like, nope, not going to listen to it. It's the devil. That's it. That's it. That's what they've been taught for so long in such a giant way. Like it's so upfront with like reefer madness all the way out, here, drink this, don't smoke. That's way better for you.
I was a kid. I thought it was killing brain cells. I believe that beer and marijuana were killing brain cells, but I didn't do either of them frequently enough to feel like I was really going to hurt myself.
If you base your decisions off commercials, as commercials are designed to make us do, like you would say that they both killed brain cells. Beer just did it in a way more fun manner. I want to be at that rocky beach, not sitting on my couch. Like, come on. But that's not what beer does at all, is it? Not at all. There's an interesting study showing American college students and how weed use, showing that is a little more popular than cigarette smoking. And I always think when I see studies like this that it's just the climate, it's the modern era that more people are comfortable saying it. I think it's the same people that have been smoking. There's not like people that, I mean, I guess there is that demographic that gets to college and doesn't know what weed is, and that's their first time. But I don't know that they're the ones that are going to come out and say it unless,
Well, and it's more available now than it ever has been.
It's always been available, though.
Yeah, but it's in certain places you can walk and get it legally, so.
Right, but you didn't just start smoking because you could do that, right?
Right.
It's
never said it was hard to find.
As
there is that segment of society that will not engage in a behavior if it's illegal. I think that tends to be more middle-aged and older folks. I'm not sure how much that affects the millennials, because they just don't. Most of the ones I've talked to just don't think that cannabis legalization should even be an issue. It's just they think it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things that's like that's a dumb law, and until that law, like until you get caught up in it and caught up in the system, it's not really real. Like it's not a real thing. Me and all my friends, we smoke weed. We can get weed. It's not a big deal. Like that law that you made is stupid. So it's not in our reality until it's forced in, and then it becomes all too real and expensive, I guess. But yeah, they're showing, they say 21% of students report having used marijuana once or more in the prior 30 days. One marijuana. That is a 4% increase from 06. 34% of those questions said they used marijuana in the prior year, 4% more than in 06. However, the levels appear to have leveled off since 2014. All right, is it 2014, the year that we all smoked weed? I think that was it, the apex.
I think so.
We're all smoking. It's cool. I said the main driver for the increased use of marijuana is the belief that it's not as dangerous as tobacco. And they point to studies of high school graduates between the ages of 19 and 22. In 06, 55% of those questions said regular use of marijuana was dangerous. 8 years later, that number dropped to 35%. He said this is probably a result of increased legalization of medical and recreational use. It's legal to use weed for recreational purposes in 4 states and 3 cities, 12 other states. Derp. So it's pretty cool. It's way better than tobacco. Like if you had to pick, I mean, I like both, but I'm an in excess kind of guy. But if you had to pick, I would definitely go with the weed. Definitely.
Oh yeah. I mean, I like a few shots of whiskey now and again. Something nice like a, Blanton's or something, just super smooth Kentucky bourbon.
Mm.
But man, you consider hangovers and it's like pouring jet fuel in your body. It's just not a good thing, especially on a regular basis. Whereas I think everybody should consume some form of cannabis, even if it was just a CBD oil or, getting THCA from leaf juicing or something, not even conventional smoking or vaping.
Absolutely.
But pretty much on a daily basis, because I'm like, man, if I get some little tumors forming, especially with all the pollution we got, I want to know that I'm, ingesting medicine on a regular basis to theoretically deal with that.
Well, there's an interesting discussion about like having a completely deprived endocannabinoid system, and who's to say some of these things that we're seeing manifest in our bodies, like cancers and tumors and whatnot, aren't due to that, or are better hindered if you have a fully functioning endocannabinoid system rather than one that's been dry for decades, centuries. It may have some cause. Who knows?
Well, it's going to be interesting what we learn over the next 20, 30 years.
Does that make sense in a science perspective? Like if you have a system that you have completely neglected, and like, could those things arise from that not helping its immune system and helping its other functions?
Well, just like any other chemical expressed in your brain, the endocannabinoids and the endocannabinoid system, has variability, I'm sure, from person to person and how it's expressed and which compounds are expressed more than others. So whether or not you have more of an effect on your CB1 receptor or more of an effect on your CB2 receptor, something like CBD would work on for inflammation and stuff like that. And I think that would be beneficial to say that you could supplement with something like that, because I'm sure some people don't have the same levels that others do.
But even the full spectrum, because it seems like a lot of the cannabinoids share a lot of the same effects. Like THC and CBD are both anticonvulsants. They're both anti-inflammatories. Just, I guess, in different levels depending on how your receptor functions.
Well, both of them definitely bind the each other's receptor, CB1 and CB2 respectively, but just not nearly as well. So they tend to bind the receptor that they're designed to bind to and stimulate that effect typically. But there's some crosstalk there.
So is it better in that respect than to have certain ones targeted, or to just have the full spectrum and whatever gets plugged in, does its thing?
I would say the more control you have over it, the better. I think it'd be beneficial to have access to all of the different cannabinoids in their most pure form. Right now it's hard to get much more than, a highly purified mixture of cannabinoids, but, to be able to take advantage of all their different potential pharmacological benefits, it'd be cool to see CBC and CBG and THCV and THCA.
Because that's the only way to really
there.
see, right? You have to isolate them and then, control, right? Otherwise, you don't know which one's doing what. If you're just smoking weed and saying, oh, I feel better. Like
right,
if you had the individual cannabinoids, you could actually monitor that and say, yes, this had this effect because it binded to this receptor.
Absolutely.
That's really cool. So what's stopping that from happening? Why?
Just lack of funding and
so if you want to fund
laws
that,
to allow it, yeah,
so, for sure. But that it's cool in these states that have it opened up more. You could write protocols and then go pitch it and get it funded, possibly.
Yeah, hopefully there's some open minds. And
do you still need a Schedule I license if you're going to do that, or only if you do it federally, like at a federal level?
I don't think you would need a Schedule I license. I'm not sure though.
Even though it is, unless you ask for like federal funding, right? They'd be like, do you have this?
I would
you
say
have to
good
pay
luck
us for this license.
Good luck getting federal funding. I would say find a way to market it.
Yeah, right.
And somebody will pay you.
We're going to weaponize it. Listen, you're going to like this. We built a robot. Awesome. All right. Well, anything else? Anything weed related? Was there anything you wanted to mention from the Northwest Cannabis Classic that caught your eye? Anything? Okay. On the spot and go. All right. Gooey, where can people get your book? I know you probably got a website for it that's better than getting it on Amazon.
Oh, no, actually, it's on Amazon.
No? Okay. We'll get it on Amazon then.
Affiliate stuff going on. I'm just not really a marketing guy, you know. I'm a journalist.
That's cool. I will market it for you because I'm not even done with it, and it's a good book. So
Yeah.
people should go kick you $5 for it and get it. I'll put a link to it in the show notes at hotboxpodcast.com. So Gooey, it's been a pleasure. We'll definitely have to get you back on and have some more cannabis discussions.
I always learn something, and now that you're inviting smart guys like the professor, I'm all locked in. So, you know,
I
please,
know.
I'd love to come back.
I've been trying to get him on. He's kind of shy, so hopefully the more he does this, he'll get more comfortable and then blow our.
This is not about sitting, you know, like, dude, it's so cool. You know, no, I want to talk to people who have some knowledge and have some interest in breaking through the urban legends and getting down to the science of it. That's where everybody needs to be. So they vote the right way, they act the right way, and make smart decisions for their own lives, you know?
That's huge because all of that affects all of us.
That's right.
So awesome. Well, hey, we'll definitely get you back on then next time, and maybe we'll find some of the fun urban myths, and we'll have the professor tell us why they're bullshit.
Yeah, that sounds like something fun to investigate.
Awesome. All right. Well, Gooey Rubinski, have a good night, man.
Thanks, buddy.
The great Gooey Rubinski, get his book on medical marijuana and read all about why it's illegal, and then listen to the Hot Box. And I think it's great because then, like, whenever people are like, "Oh, it's illegal," you can just tell them, like, do you realize where the foundation of those laws come from? Like, they're deeply rooted in hateful, racist bullshit and greedy. Those guys were maniacs.
Oh yeah.
Like back then, they ran shit and did not give one fuck about like who they were. That blows my mind that our ancestors sat back and were like, no, we're totally cool with this. We're busy with these hookers and this Wild West shit happening. Like, we're busy looking for gold.
This is nothing.
How did that happen?
Like, the stuff's growing wild in my backyard.
But I'm more blown away at the social aspect of how it got to that point to where we were just like, oh yeah, makes you crazy if you're a Mexican or a black person. It makes you want to rape people and listen to jazz.
Legislation via.
But like, what were people focused on when that was? And they were just like, yeah, no, that's fine, whatever.
Via
like
lobbying, you know, it's just
was
about
that wartime. Vietnam, maybe.
I think it was.
Before
that was well before that.
Yeah, like what was
the negative propaganda?
Guys,
started
what
way
was
before
going
that.
on? There was
30s
no
or 20s
honey
or
boo boo,
something.
right?
Maybe 40s, I don't know. Way back when, but
alcohol prohibition, and then they were done with that. That's crazy.
Either way, it's bad stuff.
Somebody should write a research paper on that shit.
Read the science papers.
How
Don't
the
read
F did we get
bullshit.
so effed by Matt Lee?
I'd like to see that explained.
Authorship, right?
Mm-hmm.
My hypothesis is y'all were a bunch of distracted, lazy motherfuckers, and then a bunch of shit happened, and then you guys got like the depression. And now we all got the depression.
Seems to be
all right. Here. We should wrap this up. Hotboxpodcast.com. We're on Stitcher. We're on iTunes. If you go get it from iTunes, make sure you leave a review. Hotboxpodcast.com/donate. If you like the show, kick us a few bucks. We appreciate it. It takes lots of money to keep something of this caliber going for as long as it's been going. So, hotboxpodcast.com. That's the site. Check it out. We'll catch you next time. Peace out.